It was late January 2018, one of those long, frigid nights when snow threatens to bury the city by morning. In Denver, Colorado, the Albian Street apartment complex sat quiet, its residents tucked into their warm homes. Yet inside one particular unit, a birthday party carried on, filled with music, laughter, and the blur of alcohol. By the early hours, the festivities had ended, the last guest had left, and the building once again sank into silence. But that calm was broken by chaos. Neighbors stirred to the sound of shouting, doors slamming, and desperate cries. Before dawn, the life of a 30-year-old wife and mother, Clarissa Clare Wilkins, would come to a sudden and violent end. From her apartment emerged only one figure, her 43-year-old husband, Cain Wilkins, screaming, distraught, and covered in blood. Had the sounds that echoed through the halls been the escalation of an argument that turned deadly? Or were they the anguished cries of an innocent husband who stumbled upon tragedy? This question would hang over the investigation, as evidence pointed in multiple conflicting directions. The discovery. At 3:28 a.m. on January 21st, police officers arrived at Unit 105. A woman, a guest from the earlier party, had placed the 911 call. She explained she had been visiting a friend in the building when Cain suddenly burst in, hysterical, claiming his wife had been in the bedroom when a gun went off. Inside the apartment, officers discovered Clare lying on the bedroom floor, a fatal gunshot wound behind her right ear. Paramedics tried to resuscitate her, but it was already too late. Cain, still holding his wife's body, was inconsolable. His clothes and hands were smeared with blood. Officers led him out and placed him in custody, partly to control the situation and partly because the scene raised immediate suspicions. Lying on the floor near a large gun safe was a .40 caliber handgun. A key was still in the lock of the safe, which also contained 2 shotguns, a .22 caliber rifle, and a 9mm Smith & Wesson pistol. That 9mm caught the attention of investigators. It was loaded, showed traces of blood at the barrel, and a spent 9mm casing was located near Clare's body. The bedroom showed signs of struggle. A broken picture frame lay in one corner, a fan and laundry basket tipped over. To detectives, it looked like there had been a confrontation before the shooting. Cain was swabbed for gunshot residue, GSR, and blood alcohol tests were administered. His BAC showed he had been drinking heavily. Clare's was far higher, over 3 times the legal driving limit. A portrait of a family. To understand what might have happened, detectives looked at the Wilkins' life together. Clare grew up in Aurora, Colorado, and graduated from Rangeview High School in 2006. She met Cain a few years later. He was 13 years older, recently divorced, and already a father of 2. Despite the age gap, they connected quickly, marrying in 2011. In 2013, they welcomed a daughter of their own. Friends described Clare as a devoted mother, deeply committed to raising her little girl. Cain, at least in public, painted himself as a grateful family man. Shortly after his daughter's birth, he posted to Facebook about his blessings: a home, a job, and a healthy family. "May all of you be as blessed as I feel every day," he wrote. But by early 2018, cracks had begun to show. Cain was unemployed while Clare worked full-time managing a Dollar Tree store. On the night of her death, their young daughter had been staying with her grandmother, only a few blocks away. Neighbors and friends offered conflicting accounts of the marriage. Some described the couple as loving, playful, and close. Others spoke of arguments, imbalance, and past incidents involving firearms. One longtime friend even recalled that, the day before their wedding, Cain had allegedly chased Clare with a loaded gun. The night of the party. On January 20th, the couple hosted a small birthday party for Cain. Friends came over, music played, and alcohol flowed freely. At one point early in the evening, Cain unlocked his gun safe to show off his collection. Guests, including Clare, handled the firearms. According to Cain, the guns were unloaded, and the display was more a matter of pride than menace. By around 3 a.m., most guests had left. The final visitor, a woman who didn't know the couple well, described an awkward moment. She claimed that both Clare and Cain suggested she stay the night. At first, Clare gently floated the idea. Then Cain insisted more forcefully, saying it was about him because it was his birthday. The guest declined, uncomfortable with what she interpreted as a sexual invitation. She hugged Clare goodbye and left for a neighbor's apartment. Minutes later, the building echoed with shouts. Neighbors reported hearing a woman's voice yelling, "No, no, no," followed by a man's voice demanding, "Get in here now." Some thought they heard a door slam. Another heard a loud bang but assumed it was something falling down the stairs. When police interviewed witnesses later, some admitted they might have mistaken Cain's high-pitched screams of panic for a woman's voice. The timing, however, lined up chillingly with Clare's final moments. Conflicting stories. Cain's version of events shifted as detectives pressed him. Initially, he insisted that he and Clare had been cleaning up after the party, chatting casually, when he heard a pop from the bedroom. Rushing in, he found her on the ground. He claimed he didn't see a gun at first, only his wife collapsed. But investigators weren't convinced. Clare's right hand showed a blank spot amid the bloodstains, an outline resembling the grip of a handgun. To some, this suggested she had fired the weapon herself. To others, it could mean Cain had forced her hand around it. Gunshot residue tests complicated matters. Traces were found on both of Cain's hands, but none on Clare's. Cain argued the residue could have transferred when he cradled her body or during the earlier show-and-tell session with the guns. Experts countered that GSR particles only spread when a firearm is discharged, not from simple handling of unloaded weapons. The autopsy raised further questions. Clare had been shot behind the right ear, yet the wound lacked soot or stippling, usually present in close-range shootings. That suggested the gun was fired from at least some distance. When detectives confronted Cain with the contradictions, he denied any argument that night. "We haven't had a disagreement since last New Year's Eve," he claimed. Neighbors, however, described shouts that sounded like fighting. Friends also recalled prior incidents where Cain's temper had turned dangerous. One particularly troubling account came from Clare's childhood best friend. She said Clare once called the police after Cain barricaded himself with a gun. On another occasion, he allegedly threatened to shoot her in the head. To the friend, Cain was controlling. His music covered the walls, while Clare's art had been pushed into corners. Motive, mystery, and aftermath. The last guest's testimony about the sexual invitation introduced a new layer to the case. Had Clare felt pressured into something she didn't want? Did tension over the failed invitation trigger an argument once the guest left? When asked, Cain admitted the idea of inviting another woman into their relationship had been discussed before. He acknowledged Clare's bisexuality and said they had rules. Both partners had to agree or nothing would happen. He insisted there had been no hard feelings when the guest declined. Still, detectives wondered if his persistence that night had led to conflict. Evidence in the apartment painted a murky picture. A broken picture frame, a bloodied pistol placed oddly back in the safe, and signs of a scuffle all contradicted Cain's calm version of events. By morning, Cain had been released temporarily, able to collect his daughter and rest. But detectives soon brought him back for further questioning. Forensic results strengthened suspicions. The 9mm Smith & Wesson, not the .40 caliber left on the floor, had killed Clare. The weapon bore blood traces, yet had been put back in the safe with the key still in the lock. To investigators, this suggested staging. Why would Clare, drunk to the point of near blackout, shoot herself with the 9mm and then somehow return it to the safe? Why had Cain's hands, not hers, carried the residue of gunfire? The case ultimately became one of interpretation. Was Cain a grieving husband whose panic cries and erratic behavior painted him unfairly as a suspect? Or was he a manipulative partner with a history of violent threats who lost control during an argument? Unanswered questions. The tragedy of January 21, 2018, left a community shaken. A young mother was gone, leaving behind a little girl who would grow up without her. Friends and neighbors were divided, some defending Cain's love for Clare, others insisting he had always been volatile. The evidence was riddled with contradictions. A blood-smeared handgun hidden back in the safe, gunshot residue on Cain's hands but not Clare's, and neighbors unsure whose cries they had heard. The attempted sexual invitation that ended awkwardly added yet another complication, hinting at tensions beneath the surface of the marriage. What remains clear is that Claire's final night began with celebration, but ended in devastating silence. The question of whether she was taken by her own hand, by accident, or by her husband's actions still sparks debate. In the end, the Albion Street apartment complex remembers that winter night not for a birthday, but for the loss of a young life, in the haunting echoes of unanswered cries. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more content. Thank you.